The retired man almost didn't open the door that night. The storm was brutal, the wind howling across the countryside, freezing rain slamming against the porch like gravel. But something, a sound barely louder than the wind, made him stop. When he finally stepped outside, his breath caught in his throat. Curled against the wooden railing was an old German shepherd, shaking uncontrollably, forsoaked, eyes dull with exhaustion, and around the dog's neck a rope, not loose, not accidental, tight enough to tell a story of cruelty, abandonment, and survival. What the retired man did next would not only save a life, it would expose a truth no one in town wanted to face. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. It helps us keep bringing you emotional stories about loyalty, survival, and the unbreakable bond between old dogs and the people who refuse to give up on them. Chapter 1, The Knock That Wasn't a Knock. 600 words. The storm had been building all evening. Elias Moore sat alone in his small farmhouse, a blanket over his legs, listening to the radio crackle softly on the kitchen counter. At 73, he'd learned to respect weather like this, the kind that crept into bones and reminded you how fragile warmth really was. Outside, the wind screamed across the open fields. Elias rose slowly from his chair to check the door, more out of habit than concern. That's when he heard it. A sound not quite strong enough to be a knock. A low scrape. Then a faint, broken whine. Elias froze. He opened the door just a crack, cold air exploding into the house. His eyes adjusted slowly to the darkness, and then he saw him. The dog lay pressed against the porch boards, body curled tight, ribs visible beneath soaked fur. Ice clung to the edges of his coat. His breathing was shallow, uneven. "Oh, my God," Elias whispered. The German shepherd lifted his head weakly. One ear twitched. His eyes, clouded with age and pain, locked onto Elias's face. And then Elias saw the rope. Rough, frayed, dug deep into the fur around the dog's neck, leaving raw, angry skin beneath. The knot was crude, deliberate. Someone had tied him. Someone had left him. And someone had expected him not to survive the night. Elias dropped to his knees instantly, ignoring the cold biting into his joints. "Easy," he whispered, voice trembling. "You're safe now." The dog didn't move. He didn't bark, didn't growl, didn't even try to crawl away. He just stared, as if waiting to see whether this human would hurt him too. Elias reached out slowly, hands open, careful not to frighten him. His fingers brushed the dog's fur, icy and stiff. The dog flinched, then relaxed. That was when Elias made a decision. He shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around the dog's body, pulling him gently closer. The dog let out a faint sigh, the first sign of relief Elias had seen. "I won't leave you out here," Elias said softly. "Not like this." He worked carefully at the rope, fingers numb as he loosened the knot. When it finally gave way, Elias felt something inside him break. The rope fell to the porch like a confession. Elias lifted the dog with more effort than he expected, his arms straining, his back protesting. But he didn't stop. He carried the old German shepherd inside. As the door closed behind them, shutting out the storm, Elias looked down at the dog now lying on his kitchen floor, wrapped in blankets, breathing just a little easier. "Someone did this to you," Elias whispered. The dog's eyes closed briefly, then opened again. He wasn't sleeping. He was watching. And Elias knew, deep in his bones, that this wasn't just about rescuing a dog from the cold. It was about uncovering why someone had tried so hard to make sure he didn't survive. The house smelled like wet fur and old wood. Elias Moore sat on the kitchen floor long past midnight, his back against the cabinet, knees aching, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of coffee he hadn't touched. Across from him, the old German shepherd lay bundled in blankets near the stove, the faint orange glow casting soft shadows across his ribs. The dog was still alive. That fact alone felt like a miracle. Elias watched the slow rise and fall of the dog's chest, counting each breath without realizing he was doing it. Too many pauses between them made his stomach knot. When the dog shifted slightly, letting out a low, tired sigh, Elias felt his own lungs finally release air. "Good," Elias whispered. "That's good." He leaned forward carefully and inspected the dog's neck. Up close, the damage was worse. The rope had burned into fur and skin, leaving deep red marks and raw patches that oozed faintly beneath the matted hair. This wasn't something that had happened quickly. The friction told a story of pulling, of resistance, of panic. Someone had tried to drag him. Elias clenched his jaw. He'd lived in this county long enough to know the signs. Farmers sometimes tied dogs when they got old, stubborn, inconvenient. Some people still believed age made an animal useless. But this felt personal. The knot had been tied carefully, intentionally. Whoever did it knew how to make sure it wouldn't slip. Elias reached for the scissors from the drawer and gently trimmed the fur away from the wound, his hand steady despite the anger building in his chest. The dog flinched once but didn't pull away. "That's it," Elias murmured. "I won't hurt you." The dog's eyes opened slowly and focused on Elias. Not fear, not aggression, recognition. Elias paused. "You've seen people before," he said quietly. "Haven't you?" The dog blinked. Outside, the storm eased into a steady drizzle, rain tapping softly against the windows. The world felt very far away inside that kitchen, as if time itself had slowed to give them space. Elias cleaned the wound as best he could, then wrapped the dog's neck loosely with clean cloth. He placed a bowl of warm water near the dog's nose. The dog sniffed, then drank slowly, carefully, as if afraid the water might disappear. Elias swallowed hard. "Someone starved you, too," he whispered. The dog ate only a few bites of the soft food Elias mashed together, then stopped. His body trembled with exhaustion. That's when Elias noticed the scar. It ran along the dog's flank, old and faded, the kind left by surgery or injury long healed. This dog hadn't always been unwanted. He'd been cared for once, loved even. Elias leaned back against the cabinet and rubbed his face with both hands. He felt the weight of it all settling in, the cold night, the rope, the quiet trust in the dog's eyes. "I'm not calling animal control," Elias said suddenly, as if someone were listening. "Not tonight." The dog's ears twitched faintly. "You're not a problem to be passed along," Elias continued. "You're not a burden." He sat there until dawn. As the first gray light crept through the windows, the dog stirred. He tried to lift his head and failed, letting out a small, frustrated huff. Elias was at his side instantly. "Easy. You're safe." The dog looked up at him again, longer this time. Something shifted. Trust, Elias realized, wasn't loud. It happened quietly, in moments when pain expected more pain, and found kindness instead. Later that morning, Elias made a call. The local vet answered groggily, surprised. "I've got an old shepherd here," Elias said. "Freezing. Rope burns. Malnourished." There was a pause. "I can open early," the vet replied. "Bring him in." Elias bundled the dog carefully, lifting him into the truck with effort that left his back burning. The dog didn't resist. He leaned into Elias's chest as if instinctively bracing himself. At the clinic, the truth deepened. The vet's face darkened as she examined the dog's neck. "This wasn't accidental," she said quietly. "Someone tied him and left him." "How long?" Elias asked. "Hours. Maybe longer." The vet checked the dog's heart, his joints, his teeth. Each finding added another piece to the story. "He's old," she said. "At least 13. Arthritic. Hard of hearing. But he's not aggressive. Not dangerous." Elias nodded. "He's gentle." The vet hesitated. "I've seen this before." Elias looked at her sharply. "People tie dogs when they can't keep them anymore," she continued. "Sometimes they hope the dog wanders off. Sometimes they hope nature finishes the job." Elias felt a quiet fury settle into his bones. "Can you save him?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "But he needs time. And care." Elias didn't hesitate. Then he has it. On the way home, the dog slept in the passenger seat, head resting awkwardly against the door, breathing steady for the first time since Elias had found him. When they pulled into the driveway, the dog stirred and looked up at the porch. Elias followed his gaze. The rope still lay there, coiled like a dead thing. Elias picked it up slowly, holding in his hands. "This isn't over," he said quietly. The dog watched him, eyes calm but alert. And in that moment, Elias understood something that chilled him more than the storm ever could. This dog hadn't come to his porch by accident. He had escaped. And whatever he'd escaped from might come looking for him. The old German shepherd didn't bark once that night. Elias more noticed it as he lay awake in his bedroom, staring at the ceiling while rain tapped softly against the windows. The dog slept on a thick blanket in the living room, close enough that Elias could hear every breath, a habit he'd already formed without thinking. But there was no barking, no pacing, no restless shifting, only quiet, too quiet. Elias rose slowly from bed and padded down the hall, joint stiff, heart already alert. He paused in the doorway and watched the dog sleep. The shepherd lay curled tightly, ribs rising and falling in a careful rhythm. His ears twitched occasionally, reacting to sounds Elias couldn't hear, distant engines maybe, or memories replaying in his dreams. "You've been through enough," Elias whispered. The dog stirred, lifting his head just slightly. When he saw Elias, his tail moved once against the blanket. That small movement felt like a promise. The next morning, Elias noticed something else. The dog, whom Elias had started calling Ash for the color of his fur, refused to step onto the road in front of the house. When Elias opened the door and gestured gently, Ash froze, body tense, eyes locked on the gravel drive. "It's okay," Elias said softly. "You're not going anywhere." Ash didn't move. Elias followed his gaze down the road, past the fence line, toward the bend where the trees closed in. Nothing there, but Ash knew better. Elias felt a chill creep into his spine. He had lived in this area long enough to recognize fear that came from memory, not imagination. Ash backed away slowly, retreating into the house until he reached the wall, and sat down heavily, eyes never leaving the door. "You think someone's coming," Elias murmured. Ash lowered his head, but stayed alert. Later that day, Elias drove into town for supplies. He left Ash resting by the window, promising he wouldn't be gone long. When Elias returned, he saw the tire tracks first. Fresh, heavy, not his. They cut sharply into the soft dirt near the porch. Elias parked slowly, heart pounding. Ash was standing inside the doorway, body rigid, a low sound vibrating in his chest. Not a growl, not a bark. Warning. Elias stepped out of the truck and scanned the yard. The rope was gone. The same rope Elias had picked up the night before, the one he had planned to take to the sheriff, was no longer coiled near the steps. Elias felt his mouth go dry. Someone had been here. Inside, Ash paced in tight circles, nails clicking against the floor. His breathing was shallow, ears pinned back. "It's okay," Elias said firmly, though his own voice trembled. "You're not alone." Elias checked the doors. Locked. Windows secure. But the message was clear. Whoever tied that rope knew where Ash was. Elias called the sheriff. When the deputy arrived, he listened carefully, eyes narrowing at the mention of the rope burns, the missing rope, the tracks. "Any idea who might have owned the dog?" the deputy asked. Elias hesitated. "No, but someone didn't want him." The deputy nodded grimly. "We've had complaints before, about people dumping old animals." "Dumping?" Elias snapped. The deputy met his gaze. Or worse. After the deputy left, Elias sat on the porch steps with Ash beside him, one hand resting firmly against the dog's side. "You ran," Elias said quietly. "Didn't you?" Ash leaned into him. "You pulled free. That's why the rope burns so deep." Ash's ears flicked. "And now they know you survived." Elias felt anger flare, not loud, not wild, but sharp and steady. "No one gets to finish what they started," he said. "Not while you're here." That night, Ash refused to sleep. He stood near the door, alert, listening, body coiled like a spring despite his age. Elias moved a chair nearby and sat with him, keeping watch. "You don't have to guard anymore," Elias said gently. But Ash didn't lie down. Some instincts didn't fade with age. Around midnight, headlights swept briefly across the front windows. Ash stiffened instantly, a low warning rumble building in his chest. Elias stood. The lights paused, then moved on. Silence returned. Elias exhaled slowly, heart racing. "Good," he whispered. "They know you're not alone." The next morning, Elias made another decision. He loaded the rope burns photos, the vet report, and the tire track pictures into a folder. Then he drove to town. Not to the sheriff. To the old feed store. He asked questions. Quiet ones. And little by little, the truth surfaced. A man on the edge of town. Known for keeping dogs until they weren't useful. A German shepherd, old, slowing down, tied during a move. One man leaned close and whispered. He said the dog wouldn't make it through the night. Elias felt something settle in his chest. Cold, certain. That afternoon, Elias returned home and knelt in front of Ash. "I know where you came from," he said softly, "and I know what they tried to do." Ash watched him, eyes steady. "You don't belong to your past anymore," Elias said. "You belong here." Ash pressed his forehead gently into Elias's chest. For the first time since the storm, Elias felt something shift. Not fear, not anger. Resolve. But as the sun set, and Ash once again positioned himself between Elias and the door, Elias knew one thing. The past wasn't finished. And protecting Ash would require more than warmth and kindness. It would require courage. The knock came just before dusk. It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. But it carried a weight that made Elias Moore's chest tighten the moment he heard it. Ash was on his feet instantly. The old German shepherd moved with a speed Elias hadn't seen since the night of the storm. His body stiffened, ears pinned back, a low, steady growl vibrating from deep in his chest. Not fear, but recognition. Elias rose slowly from his chair. "Stay," he murmured, resting a hand briefly against Ash's shoulder. Ash didn't move away. He moved closer. The knock came again. Elias opened the door just enough to see the man standing on the porch. Tall, broad, mid-50s, weathered face, a hat pulled low over his eyes. His boots were caked with dried mud, the same reddish dirt Elias had seen in the tire tracks near his porch. "Evening," the man said calmly. Elias didn't return the greeting. "Can I help you?" The man glanced past Elias into the house. "I'm looking for my dog." Ash's growl deepened. Elias felt something steady settle inside him. "No," he said simply. The man's jaw tightened. He ran off. Old shepherd, white around the muzzle. "You tied a rope around his neck," Elias said quietly. The man's eyes flickered. "That dog was mine," he said. "I want him back." Elias opened the door fully now, stepping onto the porch. The cool air carried the scent of earth and rain. "You left him to die," Elias replied. "In a storm." The man shrugged. He was useless. Couldn't keep up. Ate too much. Made noise. Ash barked once, sharp warning. The man flinched slightly, then sneered. "See?" Still aggressive. Elias didn't raise his voice. "He's protecting himself. From you." The man's posture shifted, irritation bleeding through his calm. "You don't know what you're getting into, old man." Elias met his gaze steadily. "I know exactly what I'm doing." The man stepped closer. "You don't want trouble." Elias felt Ash press against the back of his legs. Solid, present, trusting. "I already have trouble," Elias said. "I'm standing in it." Silence stretched between them. Finally, the man scoffed. "You think anyone's going to believe you? He's just a dog." Elias reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "I've got vet reports," he said calmly. "Photos, statements, and the sheriff's number saved right here." The man's eyes hardened. "And I've got neighbors who saw your truck," Elias continued. "And a town that's tired pretending not to see what you do." Ash barked again, louder this time. The man took a step back. "This isn't over," he muttered. Elias nodded. "You're right." The man turned and walked away, boots thudding down the steps. His truck roared to life, tires spitting gravel as he sped down the road. Elias stood on the porch long after the sound faded. Ash's body trembled slightly now, the aftermath of adrenaline and memory colliding. Elias knelt slowly, wrapping his arms around the dog's thick neck. "Careful of the healing wounds." "It's over," Elias whispered. "He won't touch you again." Ash pressed into him, breathing hard but steady. That night, Elias didn't sleep much. He sat in the chair by the door with Ash curled at his feet, listening to the house settle, the wind moving softly through the trees. No headlights came, no footsteps, just quiet. The next morning, the sheriff returned. Charges were filed, statements taken, the rope burns documented. The vet report added weight to every word Elias had spoken. The deputy looked at Ash, now resting calmly by the stove. "You did the right thing," he said to Elias. Most folks would have looked away. Elias shook his head. He didn't. Ash lifted his head slightly. After the sheriff left, Elias stepped outside and stood on the porch, breathing in the crisp air. The storm had washed the world clean, leaving everything sharp and clear. For the first time since that night, Elias felt safe. But as he watched Ash walk slowly into the sunlight and sit beside him, another truth settled in his chest. The danger wasn't gone, just changed. Ash was healing, but he was old. His body carried years of use, neglect, and pain. Elias saw in the way Ash lowered himself carefully, in the stiffness of his movements, in the way his breathing sometimes caught. Protection wasn't just about standing up to a man. It was about standing up to time. Elias sat beside Ash and rested a hand on his back. "You don't have to guard anymore," he said softly. "You can rest." Ash leaned into him, eyes closing briefly. Elias stared out across the fields, knowing the hardest part was still ahead. Not confrontation, not anger, but letting himself love a dog who had already been broken once, and promising not to break him again. The mornings grew quieter after that. Not peaceful, just softer, as if the world itself had learned to step carefully around the small farmhouse and the old German shepherd who rested inside it. Elias more woke each day before the sun, not because of habit, but because Ash did. The dog no longer rose to greet him. Instead, Ash opened his eyes slowly, watching Elias move across the kitchen, listening to familiar sounds, the kettle, the creak of the floorboards, the low hum of life continuing. "You're still here," Elias whispered each morning, and each time it felt like a blessing. Ash healed from the rope burns. The raw skin faded to scars hidden beneath regrowing fur. But age revealed itself in other ways. His steps were slower. His breathing sometimes caught in his chest. There were moments when Elias saw pain flicker across Ash's face, quickly hidden, as if the dog didn't want to worry him. But Elias saw everything. He adjusted the house without thinking about it. Rugs were moved. Furniture shifted. Ash's bed placed closer to the fireplace in winter, closer to the door when spring came so he could smell the outside world. They didn't walk far anymore. They didn't need to. Some days, Ash simply sat on the porch, watching the fields. His ears still twitched at distant sounds. His eyes still followed movement. Birds, wind in the grass, clouds passing slowly overhead. Elias sat beside him, hand resting on Ash's back. "You don't have to watch anymore," Elias said often. "I've got this now." Ash never argued. One afternoon, the vet came by for a checkup. She knelt beside Ash, listened carefully, and then looked up at Elias with gentle honesty. "He's comfortable," she said, "but his heart is tired." Elias nodded slowly. "How long?" She didn't give him numbers. She didn't need to. "Just don't wait too long," she said quietly. "He trusts you." That trust fell heavier than any rope ever could. The night it changed, there was no storm, no warning, just a soft sound, a quiet whine that cut through Elias's sleep like a blade. He was on the floor, beside Ash in seconds. The dog trembled, breathing shallow, eyes searching Elias's face in the dim light. "I'm here," Elias whispered, voice steady despite the fear clawing at his chest. "I won't let you hurt." Ash leaned into him, pressing his head against Elias's shoulder, as if giving permission. Elias knew then. This wasn't fear. This wasn't panic. This was the moment Ash had been waiting for, trusting Elias to make the choice he could not. At dawn, Elias made the call. The vet arrived quietly, respectfully, carrying only what was necessary. No rush, no false comfort. They moved Ash onto the porch, wrapping him in his favorite blanket. The sun rose slowly, painting the fields gold. Birds sang. Life continued. Elias sat with Ash's head in his lap, fingers brushing gently through the fur that had once been soaked with rain and cruelty. "You didn't give up," Elias whispered, "even when they tried to erase you." Ash's breathing slowed. His eyes stayed on Elias. "I promise you something," Elias said, tears falling freely now. "You will never be alone again. Not now. Not ever." The vet waited. Elias rested his forehead against Ash's head. "Thank you," he whispered, "for choosing my porch." The injection was gentle. There was no fear. Ash exhaled once, long, deep, and then grew still. Elias stayed where he was. He didn't rush the goodbye. He didn't look away. He held Ash until the sun climbed higher and the porch warmed beneath them. Later, Elias buried Ash at the edge of the field, beneath the old tree that caught the afternoon light just right. He placed a rope beside him, not as a reminder of cruelty, but as proof of escape. Above the grave, Elias placed a simple marker, carved by hand. He survived. He was chosen. He was loved. The town never made headlines. No cameras came, but something changed quietly. People began stopping Elias when they saw him in town. Some asked about Ash. Some told stories of dogs they'd lost. Others asked how Elias knew when it was time. Elias always answered the same way. "He trusted me," he said, "so I listened." On quiet evenings, Elias still sat on the porch. Sometimes, when the wind moved just right, he swore he felt a familiar weight beside him. Not sadness, not grief. Peace. Because love doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes freezing, broken, and tied with a rope. And sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't saving a life. It's keeping a promise until the very end. In a world that often turns away from the old and unwanted, kindness still has the power to change everything. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share it with someone who believes compassion still matters. Here at Old Dog Chronicles, every story matters.